Hi, all. Uh, this is my attempt to contextualize the Alex Molnar Faith Boninger sold out text. This text is related to school commercialism. I don't have, because this is a video and not a face-to-face course. I will not have the use of props that I typically would have, and of course audience participation, which is key, that I would have in a face-to-face course. So let me begin by saying that given the 1983 Nation at Risk report and the report's strong suggestion, advocacy may be a better word, that public schools draw heavily upon those who have made it in the real world, businesses and corporations, in order to equalize education, in order to bring back excellence in education, and as a way to as a way to address the problems that Kozel has pointed out in his text. And school commercialism has been seen outside of the prevailing forms of high stakes testing, has certainly been the prevailing type of reform that in the attempt to address the problems that Kozel has pointed out in his text. But the other has been to draw upon corporations, corporate involvement in public schools. I'll usually start this discussion with gimmicks and candy, but hopefully you have a bowl of candy sitting at your right there as you're watching this. Over the past decade, and this, millions of children attending our nation's schools have been marketed to in schools. That is, while in school, more so than any other time in the history of public schooling. On any given day last year, millions of students, close to millions, students across the country rode to school on buses draped with Coca-Cola ads. They were once at school. They were shown 2 minutes of paid corporate advertisement via Channel 1. I don't know if any of you know Channel 1. It was once owned by Whittle Communications, K3. Was sold several times. I don't even know if it's still in existence. A student just the other day said that it was. So students were. It's a Channel 1 is I think a 12-minute program. 10 minutes of which is what's classified as infotainment. It's supposedly news directed at youth, or delivered in a way that would be appealing to youth. But there's 2 minutes of paid corporate advertisement that corporations spend top dollar for 15 to 30 second slots. I mean, top dollar. And so you figure 2 minutes per day, and the 2 minutes per day times 180 days, that's 360 minutes or 6 hours of watching corporate advertisement per academic year. And they advertise anything from Clairol, razors, Skittles, you name it. Some students won personal pan pizzas from Pizza Hut's Book It program simply for reading a quantity of books. You remember the old Pizza Hut Book It program, which I think is still in existence. It's wonderful, warm and fuzzy. My kids did it for sure. For those who did not qualify for the pizza award, they still had the opportunity to buy Pizza Hut pizza, Taco Bell burritos, McDonald's hamburgers in their school cafeterias. Others had the additional opportunity to wash these food items down with 20-ounce Cokes or Mountain Dews. What's the sugar content in the Mountain Dew, for crying out loud? Bought out of hallway vending machines. Later on that day, some students calculated the area of R.J. Nabisco's Oreo cookie, while others conducted tests to see if Prego spaghetti sauce is thicker than its competitors. Other kids, like my own when they were in school, attended a QSP. Reader's Digest owns QSP, subsidiary of Reader's Digest. Corporate-sponsored fundraisers set up to entice students to raise much-needed funds for their Cast Challenge school. And at the end of the day, many students' textbooks covered with jackets advertising Clairol, Reebok, clutched snugly under their arms, rode home on Pepsi banner buses. Now, is there anything wrong with this situation? Some would say no. In the prevailing discourse on school business partnerships, outside of the nutrition issue, or the issue with nutrition, this is a win-win situation for schools. A win-win situation for schools and corporations. Corporations need customers. Schools need money, funds, financial resources, as well as human resources. Proponents argue that we would be remiss, morally irresponsible, if we did not draw upon those who had made it in the 21st century global marketplace. Schools that Kozel points to need this type of involvement. This, of course, Molnar, this has been an issue that I've been familiar with pretty much throughout my academic career, and that spans to at least 1992 when I started graduate school. Alex Molnar has been doing this line of work since the 1983 Nation at Risk report, charting, tracking corporate involvement in public schools. And so when I started graduate school in 1992, I was introduced to this line of argument. And I understood it. Theoretically, I understood that, look, as Molnar has put it, and Molnar as well as others, Darren Boyle, Kenneth Saltman, Shirley Steinberg, there are plenty of people who are making arguments similar to Molnar's. But Molnar and people like Molnar have said, look, after all, we can't really blame corporations for wanting profit. That's the nature of a corporation in a capitalist economy. And in fact, they're required by law to maximize profits for their shareholders. So our blame is misplaced when we put it on corporations, simply on corporations. It's the nature of the beast, as the argument runs. The issue is their involvement in a public school and how we have enabled, as Darren Boyles puts it, the wolf in the door. And of course, this is corporate involvement in schools jeopardizes the school's function, first to protect the physical and psychological well-being of students, and then secondly to carry out its function of cultivating critical democratic habits, or democratic habits of critical inquiry into the context of their lives. I'll come back to that central argument here in a second. This is a theoretical issue for me until my own kids started to school and went to public schools. My youngest was moving from kindergarten to first grade. She, brought home in her backpack an educational product titled Summer Vacation. It was close to the end of the school year. She brings home her backpack on one Friday afternoon, and as always, we go through her backpack while she's getting a snack. I pull out this glitzy 3-dimensional, and I don't have it anymore. Summer Vacation. It was in a CD package, CD-ROM coupled with a workbook. It was self-titled Edutainment, produced and marketed by Entertainment Publications Operating Company, which included a workbook that could be purchased for $11.99, and a CD had a 3-dimensional figure on the front. You held it one way in the light, it looked like a princess. The other was a dinosaur or a dragon with fangs and slobber coming out. that could be purchased separately for $18.99. So the software plus the workbook could be purchased for $27.99. On the back cover of the packaging, the company maintained that the purchase of this product would ensure that children not lose up to 25% of their reading and math skills during their summer. A possibility that studies, although they only cite one, reveal can happen. Summer vacation, the company contends, is a valuable investment in your child's future. And what parent wouldn't want to invest in their child's future? An information sheet that accompanying the product stated that the school and its students may receive special prizes just for participating. This edutainment product uh, is grade specific, and it came home with every child in my daughter's elementary school. And as you know, the first grade got a certain version, second grade and on up through fifth grade got certain versions fitting to their grade. Now, the note that came home with her with this bundle was basically amounted to a statement that if the student does not return said package by Monday, it amounts to you buying it. Now, I have an issue with that on several accounts. I had an issue with that on several accounts and still do. You don't just send my first grader home, a 6-year-old home with, something for sale and tell it, and with the threat that if you don't bring it back on Monday, you bought it. That's a little coercive, if you ask me. Don't like those tactics at all. And then secondly, and more importantly, knowing the context of the school, there were 695 children at her elementary school at the time, 46.3% of whom qualified for federal free and reduced lunch. So now you're taking advantage of poor people on top of it. But again, within the prevailing discourse on school business partnerships, there is nothing objectionable about this situation. A for-profit corporation is giving back to the community by offering a product for purchase designed to enhance a specific public good, that is, student achievement in this case. Furthermore, such practices constitute a win-win solution for the pressing financial problems that our schools face and provide real-world opportunities for students to develop the habits of mind necessary to be productive citizens of a 21st century global marketplace. Since it's primarily through the free market, proponents of school business partnerships point out that individuals concretely express their freedom to choose, then it is paramount that public schools empower students with the affections, skills, and intelligence necessary for students to develop themselves as they see fit within this 21st century free market context. Obtaining input, guidance, and participation from those most successful in this context, that is, business people, is central and vital to the school's mission. Now, critics like Molnar, Darren Bowles, Kenneth Saltman, Faith Boninger, Susan Eaton, and there's a host of them. In fact, if you go to, you simply type in Alex Molnar, you'll probably come across a little link for commercialism, research and commercialism in school. I forget the name of it. Research, and I'll post it up, never mind. Unit. He runs a unit, I think is now housed at Colorado State. He was in various places, but it's still running. I just looked at it the other day. Commercial research and commercialism in schools, something like that. A wonderful wealth of resource. I'll find that link and post it. It may be posted on under the module anyway. People like Molnar claim that such partnerships nourish students wrongly to equate consumerism with democracy, thus strengthening the ideological control that corporations have over the public mind and that have had for over 100 years. Proponents of business school partnerships assert that market democracy is the outcome of people expressing and satisfying their needs and desires through economic means. Therefore, market democracy unquestionably remains the most flexible living option for people in the real world. Telling people how they should see democracy, proponents suggest, is itself anti-democratic, contradictory to the very tenet of freedom to choose, the luxury of academics who must feed and often do so quite comfortably, they argue, at the same trough as everyone else. Well, Molnar has argued in a different book called School Commercialism, the effect of converting public schools into an arm of consumer culture necessarily, inherently so, necessarily undermines their essential civic function to promote the general welfare and strengthen civil society by educating children to meaningfully participate in the political, economic, and cultural life of their communities. The argument in, if I can get it back up here, if you simply look at the assignment in the assignment tab for Molnar and Boninger, you'll see that their main idea is their central idea is roughly the similar. What Molnar and Boninger do. Commercialism and Education Research Unit. That's what it is. Sorry. Commercialism and Education Research Unit. CERU, Alex Molnar. You'll come across the what his outfit and organization has done for, I don't know, 20 years now, close to 20 years, is simply chart the number of ways that businesses create relationships with schools. And they have identified, I think, 7 to 8 different categories or types of relationship. And they run, I mean, I had examples of these at some point. Sponsorship of programs, corporate sponsorship of programs. You may know Verizon's Innovative App Challenge. Some of your schools, if you're working in schools now, may do this. In the past, I think 471 teams participated. The top 10 get a $10,000 grant. Winning teams get Samsung tablets, or did, and use of a media lab with training to develop the concept into an app. There's Monsanto's Hawaii Science Fund grants. That's a kind of a sponsorship. There's Exxon Mobil sponsors, I think, Bernard Harris Summer Science Camp. There's Honeywell's Hip Hop Science. These are corporate sponsors of programs and activities. There are, that's one category. There's exclusive rights, or exclusive agreements, or exclusive rights agreements. That's just a matter of, which are quite lucrative, by the way. I mean, if you simply look at soda machines, or like Coke, Pepsi, Nike, Adidas, sponsoring schools, athletic equipment, exclusive pouring rights in schools, which are quite lucrative. Like I said, it's sometimes $10-20 million. Schools get a certain cut of that, a certain percentage. They get a certain percentage of the sales from machines. In some cases, they get sign-in bonuses. They get sign-in bonuses. They get incentive. If they meet a quota, if they don't meet a quota, they have to give some of the sign-in bonus back, or certain percentage of the funds from the sales back, something like that. I don't know if it's in this book or if it's in School Commercialism. I had this at one point. There was a superintendent in around the Colorado Springs area who was alerted by its finance department that they were not on track to meet the quota, the sales quota, and so he sent a email around to principals throughout his district, urging them to allow food and drink inside the classroom, extend time for lunch, and extend time between class periods, so that students would have more time to purchase, Cokes or whatever it was. There are incentive programs like Pizza Hut's Book It program, Mills' box tops for education, something like that. I mean, come on. You attempt to incentivize. Oh, I had a student achievement. Well, I don't know. McDonald's, for instance, you've seen this before. McDonald's. I collect these things too, by the way. These types of what I would call gimmicks, but whatever. Shells, Energize Your Future is a type of sponsorship of programs. An incentive program, however, is, say, McDonald's. McDonald's, Seminole County, a student sent me this several years ago, or a teacher in Seminole County sent me this. What do you call this? Report card jacket, I'm sorry. The report card jacket, of course, is, reward students who get all A's and B's in academics, no marks against their citizenship, and who have missed two or less, or who have two or less absences. That's a kind of incentive program. And of course, if there's been any pushback by the public on this win-win situation, it is in terms of nutrition. The parents parents by and large have become very concerned and vocal that the school is fostering, while it has the mission, while schools have the mission to encourage health, nutrition, and so forth, their partnerships with corporations are undercutting that mission. And so, by complaint, the very next semester, those book jackets came out without the incentive. Soda machines have come under fire. But the types of relationships, or the relationship, the fact of the relationship in general, is seen as a win-win situation or relationship, particularly for schools. Now, and I know I'm getting beside my point of identifying these relationships, but Molnar's point is that it's not that schools aren't getting something back. They are. But what they get back compared to what the corporation gets is minuscule. I'll come back to that. Sponsorship of programs, exclusive rights contracts, incentive programs, Pizza Hut's Book It program. You read a certain quantity of books over a certain period. Students qualify then to get a personal pan pizza, or they used to. Kid goes. Then what happens? First of all, Pizza Hut is associating its name, PR, with the public good, enhancing public education. Secondly, and enhancing student achievement, getting kids to read. That's a good thing, right? Then, unless you're Hewitt's child, you're going to go in with the student to pick up that personal pan pizza. You're probably not going to get it to go. I don't even know if you can anymore. We used to send our kids in, go get the pizza, kid. I know the gimmick. So you go in. If we're a family of five, I mean, if you don't go in, if you don't honor it, what does this suggest about you and your care about your child and your child's education? So we're a family of five. We go in. I'm not going to sit there and watch, Sadie eat her personal pan pizza. I'm going to eat with her. So I'm going to get food. I'm going to get a couple of drinks. We're going to yuck it up, have a warm, fuzzy feeling over a personal pan pizza, and boom, before you know it, everyone at that table begins to have a kind of impulsive attraction toward Pizza Hut. The very sign, the corporate signal or sign, Pizza Hut, sends shockwaves, warmth through students. So So public recognition is getting sales, is generating funds, and brand direct sales, good PR, direct sales, brand recognition, brand loyalty. Those are the four things that marketing works toward. That's what these types of relations underscore. They don't all do it. They don't all hit every one of those things. They could if they would. If they could, they would, for sure. But good PR at all costs. Brand recognition, brand loyalty, direct sales, even better. But the underlying thing is to cultivate a consumer materialist mindset. As Joel Spring puts it in one of his latest edition of The American School, the reason to go to school is to be able to buy things. We have attempted, our public school system, Spring argues, and Molnar would not disagree, is to cultivate a consumerist mind, a consumerist ethic. That is, that we derive our happiness, our ego satisfaction, as Victor LeBeau put it, in buying things, in material items. We seek our soul, our spirit in things, material things. That happiness is found in those things. And our standard of judgment derives from the having of those things. You know, I know it's somewhat cliche, those with the most toys wins. You've heard that. We'll come back to that issue. Sponsorship of programs, exclusive rights contracts, incentive programs, appropriation of space. That's just direct advertisement in schools. It can be any form, Got Milk, Gatorade, just direct advertising. The Coca-Cola banner buses is an example of direct advertisement. The more insidious corporate sponsored fundraisers, QSP. Then I guess the more insidious of these would be the corporate-sponsored educational materials, and that includes a range of Dove's Real Beauty Dove's Real Beauty, for instance, school tube. Good gracious, Nestle's Healthy Steps for Healthy Lives. Is a type of example. This is not a full-fledged curriculum by any means, but these are health units that allows the corporation to have its name inserted within the benevolency of schooling, and thus by association. Nestle's Healthy Steps for Healthy Lives. It was directed at kindergarten through grades 3. Up to third grade, in which the corporation makes the claim that all beverages, including Nestle products, count toward the recommended intake of water. Right. Another type of corporate sponsored, the best I think that I know of is the Exxon. Good gracious, Exxon, in consequence of the Exxon Valdez spill in Alaska, Exxon came out with an environmental science, and I forget the name of it now, and it's not in my notes, and I'd have to dig and take up too much time. I don't want to do that right now, but it came out with an environmental science curriculum. Exxon would send its instructors, that is typically people with master's degrees, out to be the teacher for a year if a school would adopt the environmental science curriculum, which would in turn alleviate environmental science teachers or science teachers to do other stuff, while this Exxon expert was in the school. But the curriculum, but in this, it came with a video, a VHS, and of course, a booklet and so forth. But Exxon attempted to make the claim that the Valdez oil spill was actually a good thing. Now, on what grounds could Exxon make the claim, or attempt to make the claim, that an oil spill of that magnitude is a good thing? Well, it claimed that it increased public awareness of such catastrophe. It increased the technologies by which to clean up such catastrophes and to prevent such catastrophes from ever happening again. And of course, the BP oil spill over in the Gulf, yeah, proved that to be wrong. Okay, so you get the idea there. There is privatization and there's online marketing. You may be sitting there thinking, come on, Hewitt. There's nothing. Look, corporations are part of a democratic society and therefore have a stake in public education, which is true. You hate to use their language. They are stakeholders, so to speak. They are interested parties in the type of schooling and in the democratic conversation of what schooling should be about. There's no doubt about that. So certainly, the argument runs, certainly they want what's best for society. Why can't a corporation be altruistic, so to speak? Why can't a corporation support a public function such as public schools without wanting anything in return? That could happen, right? Well, maybe. Let me go to Scholastic, because Scholastic's been in education for a very long time, almost, if not over a century now. And it's got a good name in education. Some of you may not think so, but okay. But overall, it's got it's got a decent name. This is in Mark Evans, who used to be a senior vice president of Scholastic, wrote this in Advertising Age. Advertising Age is the trade journal for marketing. The alarm bells rang. He's talking about the nation at risk. The alarm bells rang, and American businesses turned out in force. The American education system is in trouble, and we have become a nation at risk. In virtually every state in the Union, companies of all kinds have been going back to schools, giving time, money, and products to help meet urgent needs. Furthermore, Evans continued, business involvement in education is hardly new, but there are new forms of expression. The education system can provide a unique opportunity for corporations to support vital social needs while achieving basic marketing and public relations goals. Goodwill, good sales, and good works may fit together perfectly in education marketing. More and more companies, Evans continues, more and more companies see education marketing as the most compelling, memorable, cost-effective way to build share of mind and market into the 21st century. For example, Gillette is currently sponsoring a multimedia in-school program designed to introduce teenagers to their safety razors, building brand and product loyalties through classroom-centered, peer-powered lifestyle patterning. And he goes on to list various companies that have already experienced the power of trust with Scholastic, which includes AT&T, American Express, Apple Computer, Coca-Cola, Discover, IBM, Johnson Wax, Lipton, M&M Mars, Milton Bradley, Mott's, NBC, Nabisco, Oxy 10, Procter & Gamble, Warner Brothers, Warner Lambert, and the list goes on. And here's the telling thing. Scholastic is the Evans again. Scholastic is the only publishing pipeline covering the entire pre-K to 12 grade marketplace. Its products are interactive. Teachers involve students by using Scholastic magazines and materials. The classroom offers marketers a virtually non-competitive advertising arena. It's clear. I think Molnar had it right when he said, look, corporations after profit. I mean, there's no doubt about it. What's Evans? I mean, he's after profit. If he can do that by associating his name with a public good, all the better, because the public then starts to associate that brand with a public good and a benevolent, being benevolent, altruistic, aiding society. But does this type of what does this type of relationship undercut the function of schools? You know, the old 9-inch nails. Well, to modify the old 9-inch nails, why bite the hand that feeds you, so to speak? Schools aren't going to do anything to jeopardize its funding source, particularly when we've starved public schools. Corporations turn around to support a vital need. They turn around to be good good citizens, so to speak. But what do they want with kids anyway? Kids ain't got no money. What kids? For those of you who have kids, do they have money? Mine didn't. Well, don't just because mine didn't doesn't mean that the kids don't. According to the Consumers Union, this is flabbergasting to me. I had no idea. According to the Consumers Union, elementary age children spent $15 billion of their own money and induced another 60 billion in parental spending. Teenage children spent $57 billion of their own money and induced another $36 billion of parental spending. It's amazing. More up to date, I guess, is in the UK. It is about 10,000 children are a captive audience. The average American child watches an estimate between 25,000 to 40,000 television commercials per year. We'll come back to this. The school being an arena, a non-competitive advertising arena. In the UK, it is about 10,000, 15,000 to 17,000 is spent by companies advertising to children in the US. Over 40 billion was spent in 2009 by the fast food industry alone. Okay, I've already given you those. It's an ingenious move at a time at which corporations are struggling for market share, brand loyalty, brand recognition. It requires corporate marketing to go into spaces that have never been tapped before, so to speak. Subways, you go into Subways. Coca-Cola at one point toyed with putting a Coca-Cola banner on the moon, something like that, as a satellite that beamed back Coca-Cola back toward Earth. They have to invade psychological spaces. I mean, if you look now, psychology. What's the average number of corporate advertisements that the average person sees a day? I think psychologists tell us, what is it, between 1,000, 2,000, 2,000, 3,000, something like that. Everywhere you look, there is a mark. There's a commercial. Look at my watch. Look at this. It's a commercial. Clothes now it's the symbol Marmot. Timex. I got a Timex on. That's a marketing ploy. You can't see that. I got this cup here. I don't know where this came from, but right there it is. I don't know. Cisco. Everything is as a form of product placement. The problem, however, is that corporations have to cut through the clutter. What happens when a person is hyperstimulated? Well, they start to block out that stimulation, the messages. I mean, sure, the argument was sure, we're bombarded by a bunch of a plethora of advertisement, but that doesn't mean that we absorb it, and that doesn't mean that the advertisement that we're so, kind of like a Pink Floyd's The Wall, where we're hooked up to electrodes, and we simply go out to do what the that which is piped or funneled in suggests that we do. It is true. We block it. We become desensitized to it. And so the trick for marketers is to cut through that marketing clutter such that the customer, the person, sees this particular image, adheres to this particular message. Schools enable that to happen if it is uncluttered by marketing. If it is associated with a benevolent, what is perceived to be a benevolent institution, schooling. Why wouldn't I attend to that message? Well, and what does this have to do with being captive? Come on. The argument runs that Molnar argues here that, look, this is a captive audience. You have children at very tender psychological ages being bombarded with explicit and implicit messages, corporate messages that not only associate the purchase of a product, event, function with fear, identity. I mean, if you just simply look, our identities in many ways. I forget Boninger once argued that look, we're a consumer. We buy, our senses of self are often bought and sold in the marketplace. That we in our attempts to be individuals, we buy parts. We buy images that are packaged for us, and which in turn may feel as if we're individuating ourselves, but it just proclaims that we're part of a tribe. I'm the kind of person who wears X, who looks like X, who drives an X, so to speak. Jim McNeil, Kids' customers. James McNeil, who was an expert in marketing to children. There's something that sounds wrong about that. Wrote a book called Kids' Customers, a handbook of marketing to children, which was published in 1992. He wrote a book called The Kids Market, Myths and Realities, published in 1999. Kids' primary, secondary, and secondary influence in future markets. Okay, that's the subtitle. I'll come back to Jim McNeil for just a second. I forget the kid's name. Mike Searles. Mike Searles used to be the former president of Kids R Us. Mike Searles put it, if you own this child at an early age, you own this child for life. That is cradle to grave. You've heard that. Cradle to grave marketing, cradle to grave corporate sponsorship. The idea is that if you can capture brand loyalty early, then you got mini markets for every person there is on the face of the planet. You got mini markets that can be groomed, cultivated, erased, and replanted. I'm screwing the metaphor up over the course of that individual's life. Jim McNeil, the development of a consumer, identifies the fact that kids pick up marketing at a very, very early age, from age 1. McNeil notes, from age 1, accompanying parents and observing. Children are taken with their, by the time a child can sit erect, he or she is placed in his or her culturally defined observation post high atop a shopping cart. From this vantage point, the child stays safe in proximity to parents, but can see for the first time the wonderland of marketing. Age 2. At the same time, the youngster is learning how to get parents to respond to his or her wishes and wants. This may take the form of a grunt, whine, scream, or gesture. Indeed, some tears may be necessary, but eventually almost all children are able on a regular basis to persuade mom and dad to buy something for them. Age 3. At this point, the child has completed many connections from advertisements to wants to stores to displays to packages to retrieval of want-satisfying products. For many parents, this is a pleasing experience. Ditto for the marketers, for it signals the beginning of the child's understanding of the want satisfaction process in a market-driven society. There's age 4. And so the American Medical Association conducted a study, and I forget what year this was. They showed, the American Medical Association showed, I don't know, 300, I forget the number of 3 to 4 year olds, a range of corporate, I think 365 corporate symbols. 3-year-olds, 52% of 3-year-olds could identify every one of those corporate logos. 73%, that was 52% of 3-year-olds. 73% of 4-year-olds could identify every one of those corporate logos. In some cases, the 3 and 4-year-olds couldn't even identify either their first or last names. If you own this child at an early age, you own this child for life. Mike Searles put it. Well, there you have the beginnings of this issue. Some would say this is at the forefront of the democratic frontier. This is the democratic frontier, what it suggests and pretends for a democratic society. If corporations, the conflation of capitalism and democracy will then be complete, as the authors suggest. And basically what that means is it would become an oligarchy. Your task then is, one, to be able to understand, in the assignment at least, is to be able to understand the author's argument. Do they? Well, hang. Give me a second here. I am pulling up the assignment as we speak. Okay. In Sold Out, Alex Molnar, Faith Boninger argue that although school commercialism is often wrapped in the benign trappings of a partnership with public-spirited corporation, advertising and marketing in schools is anything but benign. More specifically, these partnerships, the authors contend, undercut the school's responsibility to protect the general welfare of students and to engage them in a meaningful analysis of the context of their lives. That is their central idea in this text. They identify the various categories and examples of those categories so as then to link those examples back to that central idea for support in order to make their argument or in order to argue their point. Your task is to thoroughly explain how and why, according to Molnar and Boninger, this is so, including identifying, this is your task, identifying those categories with concrete examples of each, making sure that you tie back those examples to that central idea. And then finally, take a reasoned stand on this matter. It's clear that some of these types of relationships, come on, Pizza Hut bucket program, you could say is more, but some of these relationships are more benign than others. There's no doubt about it. I would agree with that. It's not as insidious and invidious and whatever else you want to call the corporate-sponsored curriculum materials. And there are a bunch of examples in that text. But as as Darren Bowles has put it, once you let the devil's foot come in the door, it's open. I mean, the devil's inside, as he puts it. Now you may or may not agree with that. That's fine, but take a reasoned stand on this matter. You want to be specific, thorough, specific with concrete examples tied to the author's central idea. You want to be thorough. You want to explain how and why according to the authors, these types of partnerships undercut the school's two functions that they identify. I doubt that I'll have additional video on. Look, Molnar and Boninger aren't self-proclaimed Marxists. They don't make a Marxist critique of schooling. They're criticizing, their criticism comes from a different tradition, so to speak. Not to say that they may or may not agree with the Marxist interpretation or understanding of public schooling. But this is not their argument. There is that argument that American public schooling, it has roots back to the 1930s for sure. But Bowles and Guinness made the argument in the argument of schooling for capitalist America that public schooling merely reproduces the prevailing social roles in a particular society. And in this case, it's a capitalist society. And there are more up-to-date versions of that, particularly of that argument, particularly in a late capitalism or a post-modernity. Though I don't think I may or may not post a video or discussion about that matter. But this is the context for this text and this issue.